You're looking for another carbon copy van life camper conversion, aren't you? Custom alpine windows, and it's not grey. This one is going to be a little different, but there's more. The original 70s wedge, a Lotus Esprit, and when that's finished, this thing is towing it across the continent to some choice driving roads and the granddaddy of all campers, a little V-dub that I'm going to restore and sell to help fund my dream workshop build. If you still want more, check out everything that led to this point. Keep your expectations low and your spirits high. And here's everything that it took to prepare an old van for paint. That's what a Migwell looks like when there's no gas left to shield it from the haters. And this is what a rust hole looks like from underneath a Mercedes. They all do this, sir. The underseal is so good that generally, if your Mercedes is rusting, it's probably rusting from the inside out. This Gent Sprinter has 3 seams in the roof that'll eventually leak, and I wasn't going to show you the repair work in the sliding door footwell that rusted out as a result, but you must share my pain. Yeah, I probably should have picked a better starting point, but most of my cars come to me like down on their luck strays, and I feel sorry for them, like a sucker. Hey, that like thing was fun, wasn't it? Did you soup up the like button? Soup up the like button. Transparent paint protection film is all the rage on cars these days. Well, here's the Dusseldorf version from nearly 25 years ago. And Dusseldorf would have gotten away with it too, if it wasn't for the Duff vinyl wrap guy with the slashes and the knife.
The brown here isn't rust staining, it's factory cavity wax. You know, some say these sprinters like to rust, and I'm not convinced, and I'm working on a rusty one. What I mean is, I'm not convinced they rust any more than any other commercial vehicle of the last 20 years, certainly not more than the model Sprinter that replaced this one. Those things are like wet paper. Either way, it's not for want of Mercedes-Benz trying. High quality underseal, stone chip protection film and cavity wax, they weren't scrimping. You know, maybe if these vans do like to rust, it's something to do with the concept that as we recycle our metals and recycle them again, they become less and less pure, holding tiny inclusions with differing valences so that the metal effectively reacts with itself to cause oxidation. And I don't know if that's a thing, I'm just spitballing. Away from any bare metal, of course. What you're looking at now is a fudge up. I fudged the cut in the old metal last episode to let in this repair panel, and now I have to make up the gap with offcuts. How did I get this so wrong? I was having a zero fudge given day and just couldn't make myself care. This repair won't end well. Total mind fudge. Each one of these grey blotches was a nick in the paint, and most of them showed only as a stone chip sized spot. If you want to see how far the tin worm can creep under the paint around a stone chip, check out the last episode when I peeled each one of these back. I dabbed them with epoxy primer to keep the air off them while I completed other work, and intended to skim each one of them with the lightest of layers of filler, but it never happened. The van was just too big, and like the Golden Gate Bridge, every time I got to one end of it I had to go back and start again at the other for some job or other, and I had too little time. The finished paint shows every single one of these to a greater or lesser extent, but I learned things, like a kinda smooth surface won't look better once sprayed a uniform colour, it'll look worse. But hey, look out over there. Look upon a whole field of fudges I don't give. We're here for two reasons. First and foremost, to weld up this middle roof seam, but also to point out all those micro blisters in the primer. This was likely water in the airline reaching the gun, and needless to say, I'll be taking more precautions to try and prevent moisture in the paint later. Back to the roof seam. This is a lap joint. The forward roof panel overlaps the midsection and is spot welded to it along the overlap. I found that the metal expanding from the heat of the new seam welds didn't have anywhere to go because of the old spot welds, so it buckled and warped. So I'm going to zip a gap with the grinder, a small section at a time, and weld up that gap as I go. Okay, Billy's super sketchy monster truck extravaganza just keeps on giving. It's time to move Big Daddy Don Bodine's truck, the Behemoth, for the first time since 1974. First up, we're tackling the C's parking brake on the station where classic motoring survived. SOUP, classic motoring. There was nothing wrong at the hub. The problem all along was the seized junction where the handbrake cable gets split and sent to each wheel. All of this would have been a big old waste of time, but it's a silver lining servicing for the brake linings. On one side, at least. The final push on the custom roof light windows begins with some repairs to the foremost roof seam, almost completely rusted out, and you can see the wide repair I've already done across the width of the roof, replacing all of the original lap joint and then some. The section I'm letting in here is metal I got from the roof of a scrap Sprinter van in a graveyard of Sprinters last episode. Hey, you know I've no control or say over when and where the restoration elves appear, right? But sometimes, if I look away just at the right moment, they work their magic. Here's how close the shoulder line of a T1N Sprinter roof is to the rear roof section of a Land Rover Discovery Series 2, and this'll actually sit down a little closer once I've trimmed the top edge up on the roof flat. It took me a week or more to put the alpine windows into the roof on the other side of the van, and I did the first one on this side in about 2 hours. Just goes to show that being diligent, measuring twice when you don't know what you're doing, makes for slow progress, sure, but it also reduces the risk of doing something wrong by a factor of 50. That's science, by the way. Yeah, twice bitten. So, what's your best guess? A stray spark or welding spatter got under the shield and cracked the glass? Nope. As I tacked the glass frame into the Sprinter body, I mistakenly loaded up the glass with undue tension by forcing the frame into a position it didn't rest easy in. Both times the glass let go with a mighty pop. You see, windscreen bonding hardens over time, and the youngest any of these alpine windows could be is about 17 years old, and anything up to 25 years. The bonding in them, as I was about to find out, was rock solid. So there was no give, no flexibility between the glass and the frame, and any twist or pressure I exerted on the frame was being fully transmitted to the glass. Just so happens 2 of them gave way. And that leaves us with potential for more broken screens once we get this thing driving and the body starts flexing. These are the tools of torture: 2 ring spanners and some windscreen fitter's square section cutting wire. Square as in sharp edge so that it's a blade. See how there's a sharp transition from light to shadow on it? I've used this stuff before with Tony from AAA Windscreens, and it's the proverbial hot knife through butter, but not this time. So begins an absolute battle to cut the remaining alpine glass out of the roof. Initially, I couldn't even get the wire started. The curve of the glass and the close quarters with the bodywork meant it was just impossible to get a cut going from outside the van. So I took the sideshow to one of the broken windows where I could easily get the wire into the groove, and instantly realised just how hardened and tough the bonding adhesive was.
There's no way I can do 6 of these alone. This stuff is just rock hard.
It took most of an afternoon just to get the remains of 1 broken glass and 1 full screen out, and it was obvious the job was going to be impossible alone, when out of nowhere came a stranger who turned out to be a guy called Paul, who recognised the van poking out of the unit and stuck his head in to say hi. Even with the 2 of us, it was dark before we had the last piece of glass out. We were down to the last few scraps of cutting wire and the arms were hanging off the pair of us. To say Paul was the right guy at the right time is an understatement. Before he left, he dropped these motivational gems.
See when you come out the other side, that's the feeling. That's the good mental health feeling, you know? So few people are able to push through the hardship. It'll be like this thing when it's finished, like, you know, you won't even think for a second how the hardship, you know?
Paul's got a YouTube channel of his own, as it turns out, and it's a good one that needs a little support. Check out Motor Zen Media, where you'll get a bunch of motoring news I'll bet you've never heard. Link will be in the description, and thanks, Paul. Turns out a sharpened scraper on glued plastic protection film is much more effective than a blunt one. and a heat gun. All of this had to be gone over with the wire wheel on the grinder to remove the last of the glue, then sanded, both sides, on sills longer than a Panamax class oil tanker. PU. After a crash course in spraying at Delta Auto Body, I set about turning the unit into a makeshift spray booth. This setup is a separator and filter that came with the Extreme Plasma CNC machine, carefully mounted on a loose rear door. And off camera I also have a second moisture trap and 2-stage separator where the air line leaves the compressor reservoir. I bought myself the best gun I could afford, a low-end DeVille Bis, knocked up a MacGyver style gun rest, and then spent hours masking the van. I used the same masking film to vault the roof of the unit and seal off other areas. The unit itself had to be cleaned too, and the boys at Delta also gave me some extraction filter and a big ass fan to create a vacuum in the space. It all went by in the blink of an eye, and I'm a poet and I don't know it, but you've seen the whole van sanded in this video. What you haven't seen is the whole thing being dusted down, rubbed down with reams of cloth, and then degreased with panel wipe and yet more cloth. Whether the van is ready or not, it's finally time to hit it with a full coat of epoxy primer.
See, the thing about stop motion is it makes months of work disappear and seem like nothing. Tune in next time when I get the colour onto this thing, and then we're into some cool stuff like making the wheels bling and deleting roof rips because they're kind of spoiling the atmos. I just want to thank Delta Auto Body and Extreme Plasma for continued support, and especially to my patrons:
Eric Adland, Dexter, Sean, Nerman Dedick, Ed Longridge, Ojbe Merck, Eric Stromblad, Martin Meinke, Marcel Blevins, Dylan, Peter, Camilo Gamboa, Suna Langdal, Chris Crawford, Mal Passmore, Berlin Heck, Dana Garvin, Craig Carling, Malcolm Young, Eric Bryan, Leonard Klutzel, Andrew Nicholson, Jeldrick, Georg Graham, Joby Parks, Max Zombeck, Avon van Steenhouse, Charalambros Macridis, Michael Keeney, Patrick Crotty and Alexander Durlach.
You have been keeping me going all of these months that I have been off air. Patrons have been getting behind the scenes update videos, so they know things are about to hot up here in a big way. Tune in, stay tuned in, stay stuck in, and until I see you the next time, good luck.